What's going on, guys? My name is That Urban Sketchman, and I'm here to teach you how to urban sketch. Are you ready? Great, grab your supplies and I'm going to teach you step by step how to draw the best buildings of your life. First, we're going to start with the basic shapes. From the basic shapes, we're going to add a little bit more detail, we're going to add a little bit more color, and boom, there you go, your first building. Congratulations, you're now an urban sketcher. Make sure to sub and subscribe, that's the same thing. Make sure to sub and comment down below and let me know what you want to learn next. What the fuck? What's going on, guys? My name is Brian, also known as That Journaling Guy, and today I'm bringing you a little bit of a different video. So something you should know about me is two things. One, I love to journal, obviously, and two, I'm really big on skill acquisition. And so I have this thing, I'm going to share something with you guys. Some of my biggest moments of personal development and transformation have come from breakups, like relationship breakups. And during that time, like that breakup period, I seem to have coped with that breakup with some kind of skill acquisition. Like I learned to program once I broke up with a certain relationship. Another one is I learned how to lift, like weight lift. I learned about this certain like forms and Olympic lifting. Then I learned how to play flamenco guitar. I started picking up an instrument. Then I learned videography and photography. And little by little, I just started like racking up these skills. So I consider myself like a lifelong learner. And I feel like I've seen that more throughout my life, but I've never really applied a process. I've never really applied consistency in that learning. And so this is what this video is about. I wanted to apply that consistency. I wanted to really break down the process of what it takes to acquire a skill and be decent at it, be effective in using that skill. So before going on, let's talk about what skill acquisition is. Skill acquisition, the art of mastering new abilities, has been a fundamental pursuit of humankind throughout history. In its essence, skill acquisition is the process of acquiring and refining knowledge, abilities, and expertise in a specific area. So how does skill acquisition work? It begins with the recognition that skills are not innate, but can be developed through intentional practice and experience. It involves a series of stages that individuals progress through on their journey towards mastery. So the first stage is the cognitive stage, where learners gather knowledge, understand the basic principles, and conceptualize the skill. This stage is crucial for building a foundation and grasping the fundamentals. Next comes the associative stage, where learners refine their techniques through deliberate practice. Mistakes are identified and corrected, and connections between different aspects of the skill are established. Feedback and guidance play a vital role during this stage. Finally, we reach the autonomous stage. At this point, the skill becomes more automatic and natural. Performers can execute the skill with ease and precision, often without conscious effort. Mastery and fluency are achieved through years of dedicated practice and real-world application. So, skill acquisition has a rich history dating back to ancient civilizations where artisans, craftsmen, and warriors honed their craft through rigorous training. From the mastery of ancient martial arts to the development of intricate craftsmanship, human progress owes much to the pursuit of skill acquisition. So you're probably wondering how long this takes, and I did too. So let's find out.
How long does it take from starting something and being grossly incompetent and knowing it to being reasonably good in, hopefully, as short a period of time as possible? So, how long does that take? Here's what my research says. 20 hours. That's it. You can go from knowing nothing about any skill that you can think of. Want to learn a language? Want to learn how to draw? Want to learn how to juggle flaming chainsaws? If you put 20 hours of focused, deliberate practice into that thing, you will be astounded at how good you are.
Now, one of the biggest things is, why urban sketching, Bryant? You may be asking yourself. And I will tell you, young, very nice viewer, the thing is, I've never really considered myself an artist. I do very artistic things, but I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an artist. Just like I don't really identify with a lot of the skills I've developed. I don't consider myself a photographer. I don't consider myself a videographer, but I wanted to specifically develop this skill for my journaling in general. Something about urban sketching really spoke to me, where I could capture experiences and moments and also sharpen that artistic skill. I wanted to do something that didn't have too much investment in terms of time. Like, I didn't want to learn rocket science. So I wanted to start smaller. I'm not trying to be the best artist on the planet, but I want to be decent enough where I can take out my journal in a little cafe or sit on a bench and be able to draw my surroundings. And so that's actually the little mini adventure for this video. We're going to go out. I'm going out into the world. I know. I'm going to touch grass, and I'm going to draw my first building out in real life. Up until this point, I've just been practicing using pictures that I found on Pinterest where I have a board. And I think it's time we go out and change that. And I wanted you guys to share that first experience with me. In the car right now, like in the city where I'm gonna draw, and I'm a little nervous. I don't know why. Like, I'm looking at all these buildings. I'm like, can I draw this? Is this too big? I don't. From my pictures so far, you can see I tend to isolate just like single buildings, and it's a lot easier because everything is framed for you. So deciding what I'm going to draw and how to frame it, it feels a little overwhelming. And I knew this was going to happen, so that's why I didn't go out yet. I want to save it for the video because I'm nervous. But this is the reason I'm here. This is the point of me doing this. I want to be able to go places and be able to capture them in my drawings and in my sketches. So I guess let's go. I guess let's keep going. We'll see how it goes. So urban sketching awakened a new perspective within me, transforming the way I experienced and kind of appreciated the city that was around me. It was the mindset that urban sketching instilled that really taught me how to slow down and kind of notice the world around me, notice the intricate details and sort of this hidden beauty that often went unnoticed amidst the chaos of daily life. I really appreciated this video. It allowed me to reconnect with my inner artist. And as I shared my sketches with others, I realized that urban sketching held the power to kind of connect people. It sparked a lot of conversations and even sort of fostered a sense of community with admirers of the craft and artists alike. So now I kind of want to talk a little bit about the stages at which I'm at. So starting with the cognitive stage, the time I show at the end only takes into account the hours I spent actively drawing, not the amount of time that went into the research and general knowledge sessions that went into learning about urban sketching. People like Toby Sketch Loose and Sketching Scotty on YouTube were huge in helping me understand the fundamentals of sketching. Instagram and TikTok were also a huge well of inspiration for me. Now, in the associative stage, this was the most challenging stage of the process because I went straight into practice instead of theory. Mind you, I'm not an artist. I've never really been an artist. The fundamentals of art are gone on me. Like perspective, proportion, and lighting are things I never intentionally gone out of my way to learn or develop. I decided to just practice away, and what ends up happening when you just practice without learning any theory is that you practice incorrect techniques. So no, practice does not always equal progress. If you're going in the wrong direction, you'll just be really good at doing things incorrectly. And another roadblock I ran into was that I didn't really have any feedback on my art. I was learning enough where I could self-correct and had a general idea of what I thought looked good, but I didn't have anyone who could look at my art and tell me where I should focus or how I could change. This probably slowed down the progress I could have made earlier on in my journey, but I feel okay with where I'm at. And now the autonomous stage, I know my art isn't perfect. But I'm at a point where I can see buildings or a cityscape and sketch a general idea of what I'm seeing in front of me. The feeling of the city, the feeling of the buildings, they look like something, and I'm now in a process where I'm trying to refine the skills that I currently have. So my immediate thoughts right after finishing, I'll tell you how long it took me. It took me about 40 minutes to finish this drawing. I don't love it, okay? This shit going out in real life is way harder than drawing off of a picture. Like, I was struggling to pick the size and framing it correctly. It's a whole different ball game than drawing it from a picture. But that's why we're doing this, all right? Now I'm gonna start going out more and hopefully capturing better pictures. But this is what we got from our little touching grass and not being nerds and being inside. That's what we got. That's the building. which isn't bad. And I feel like I got the general idea. I just didn't want to add too much detail or go like crazy. I just wanted to do a quick sketch. And it's funny that I think a quick sketch is 40 minutes. That took me 40 minutes. Hopefully we get faster. I'm not too happy with it. It is what it is. We'll do another drawing at home. Is that a bug? Okay. We're good. All right, let's go back home. So it's probably time for the most important part of the video, and we're going to flip through my urban sketchbook. I decided to use a Moleskine for like an art book, and then I used my Strathmore watercolor book for the two notebooks for urban sketching. So I have tried this before, okay? This was a challenge that I was meant to do back in February, and so these first ones that I'm going to show you were from February, and I really like this one. This one turned out much better. This is like my third urban sketch ever, and I really liked how this one turned out. This one's okay. Then I started trying to get a little bit more colorful, but there's something I want you to notice. I want you to notice how flat everything is. I only tended to try to just get like the front of buildings. I mean, I tried to add a little bit of dimension here, but the colors really kind of screwed it up. And I want to remind you, the biggest reason that and one of the reasons that I even started sketching was because I wanted a reason to use my fountain pens. I wanted a reason to use all of my fountain pens, and I just always liked the looseness you could have with a fountain pen. It looked beautiful to me. I really liked how it looked. So all these are made with fountain pens. I was first using my Muji, and then I ended up using my Diamond Twisby Mini. This one was my attempt at shadows. I was using Tumbos for the shadows and the colors. This one also came out really good. And I don't know why. I ended up picking like ramen shops, like Japanese ramen shops as my inspiration. I'm not really sure why, but I loved how they looked. Now this is the first one. This is the first drawing of the challenge. And it was my attempt to make it pop out a little, you know, a little more dimension. I tried it, but I'm going to be honest, I don't really have the art fundamentals necessary for proportion and perspective. I never really studied art. I never really practiced art. These are things I kind of had to develop in this journey. Here, we're back to the front-facing stuff. I don't know what the color choice here was. In the picture, it's green, okay? It is, but wow, did that turn out terrible. Here, I messed up. And one of the cool things about starting out with fountain pen is you kind of had to live with the mistakes you made. You kind of had to live with the lines. Here, you can see the difference in size here. I was like, all right, this is obviously going to be way too big. Let me just move over. I'll come back and do something there, but I just moved over to the next page, and there's nothing wrong with that. Here's where I'm starting to kind of see my style, though, I guess. If I could even say I've developed a style, my style of urban sketch. These two are probably some of my favorite from the early ones. These turned out so nice. And here we see a little bit more dimension. I'm starting to add a little bit more stuff in the back. And here I'm using a fountain pen ink wash inside of one of my Tumbo pens, more specifically like this, to get the shading. So I did start using a little bit of watercolor and then dabbing it. And then I came to find that it was making my fountain pen ink like bleed terribly. It was really bad. So I ended up having to get new ink, like a different kind of ink. And the ink I was using was the Takesume Iroshizuku. I'm probably butchering that, but the Pilot ink. And I ended up having to switch to the Sailor and then eventually to the Platinum Carbon ink. Here, this is where I started to kind of be a little bit more loose with it. I was trying to just get more of the generic shape of the buildings. I was trying to get more of like the idea of the buildings instead of trying to go for exact like copy. Here I did this on stream, actually. Not my favorite use of color, but I really wanted to start incorporating the greens of the foliage and the plants. This was my first attempt of actual using watercolor, and a holy disaster. The building is a mess. This is another one that I actually really liked. It was really scratchy, it was loose, and I felt like the proportions were a little bit better here. A little, I would even say a little cartoony, a little cartoon-esque. And honestly, one of the biggest challenges was there were days where I didn't want to do this. I really didn't want to do this. I was tired, or I'd come back exhausted from something, from work, from hanging out with my friends, from being out, and then having to come and do a sketch. It sucked. And this was one of those really low effort kind of drawings, but I ended up doing it anyway. And it was kind of like, okay, at least you did it. Tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow was not better. The next day, this sucked. So I had to try again, and we did. It came out a little bit better. This was the same day. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with just putting down what you have and trying again. Some of them will be unfinished. Moving on, this one I'm starting to use a little bit more grays. I'm trying to learn a little bit more about shading, and I really like how this one turned out too. Again, we're back to like a more simple one. Here, I kind of just needed to get a drawing done, so I sketched this. And here, I really like the dimension. I think I got perspective a little bit better. It's a little bit more 3D. The shading underneath, it seems alive. And now this was one of those where it was just too hard. I had picked a picture that was just too difficult for my skill at that point in time, so I had to move on. And I just did another one on that same day. And here I'm still trying to learn about shadows. I'm trying to figure out the lighting, and you know, so much of this is just learning the fundamentals of art in general, perspective, proportion, and the lighting. And here was my attempt of trying to get shadows, and it's not terrible, but the shadows are like too sharp. Again, like my fountain pen ink was smudging everywhere. Wasn't great. Moving on here, a little bit more perspective. We're starting to kind of see a little more depth. I mean, we're starting to kind of be able to see into buildings. I like how it kind of comes off to the side, the little foliage. The green isn't bad. I like this page. These two, okay, this one gives me like a Tim Burton kind of vibe, and this one was one of my favorites. This one came out super well in my opinion, and I really enjoyed it, making it. I took my time. I took a lot of effort in making this one. Again, moving on. If it doesn't come out well, it's okay. Just start another page. And this is the one for the 19th now. But I did end up picking something that was just a little too difficult for me, a little too detailed for what I was trying to do. So I ended up giving halfway throughout this one, just did a little bit of the color and moved on. Tomorrow is another day. Here we're starting to see a little bit of a shift, I think, a little bit more detail, a little bit more effort. I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable with the blacks and what should be colored in and what shouldn't be colored in. Disaster and disaster. And then here at this point, I felt stuck. When I started making this picture, I felt like I wasn't progressing anymore. I felt like I had reached the limit, and there was definitely something to be said about practice over theory. Like, if you're always practicing the wrong thing, you're just going to end up being very good at doing the wrong thing if you don't learn enough theory and learn enough about the skills and developing those skills outside of what you know. This is what happens. You end up just kind of doing the same thing. So I really had to start going out of my way to research a lot more. Here we're starting to see a little bit more confidence, I think, in my drawings, you know, in the way I'm coloring things. This one I just had the time, so I drew it brick by brick, went one by one. This one's one of my favorite. This one ended up really turning out well too. It was like an old like Japanese like shack kind of thing, and I really like how this one turned out. I ended up adding like a really bold line on the outside with my Tumbo pen and ending up like liking how it looks, so I did it for a few more. The stairs crushed me. This was terrible. I could not for the life of me get the stairs on this picture, so I moved on for that day. Here, another one of those really low effort days. Just needed to get a sketch done. Didn't even paint, add any color. I added just very tiny little smidgens of gray and left it as is. Again, another building that was just a little bit too difficult for me, so we did something else. These little ramen shops, these little Japanese shops just ended up being some of my favorite inspiration. I'm not even sure why. A little like another shop, started adding a little bit more black here. I feel like I'm getting a little bit better with the shading. This one ended up being my absolute best one. Here, I'm actually going to put the reference picture like right here so you can see how good this one ended up being. I am in love with this, how this one turned out. This one ended up being so good and absolutely one of my top 5. Had to get one done, guys. Had a really long day that day, and I just got the sketching done. And this one had potential. I feel like I was starting to get the dimensions, and it looks pretty good. And I just ended up just doing the sketch and calling it a night. This was at like 11 p.m. after being out for like 14 hours. Here's another example of me doing that outline, and this one has more watercolor. This is where I started using more watercolor in my moleskin, which I wouldn't recommend if it isn't specifically meant for watercolor, but I just ended up like dabbing it or drying it out, not using it too wet. This one I did on my Instagram, and here I guess you would call these like Victorian houses. I guess I started like really enjoying like drawing like Victorian houses. So that one ended up being pretty nice. Here, I completely butchered the perspective on this one, but even is like just like not doing a good job with it, it still came out okay. It still came out better than my first one, I think. This one is also one of my favorites. This one came out really nice, and I want to show you guys. This is the reference picture I used for this one, and I think I did a pretty good job. Again, the proportions are a little out of whack. It's not 1 for 1, but I think I really captured the essence of this picture. Then this was the one you guys saw in the video where I was time-lapsing it. This was yesterday's, and it was okay. I feel like it wasn't too in-depth. But for my watercolor one, I really wanted to focus on using watercolors. I wanted to paint bigger pictures. I would use more effort. These are more effortful sketches, the ones I had more time for. So we'll start. Boop. Don't mind that. That was just a random one. But here, this was my first sketch using watercolors. And it's not my favorite, but it's not bad. I kind of liked it. Here I had like a little cozy like alleyway building. Here I'm trying to do more scenes now, not just single buildings. So I'm trying to capture entire frames, like multiple buildings, multiple things in one frame. So here I'm trying to step a little bit away from just doing single buildings. This was another attempt, and I think this one came out terrible. This one was so bad. The picture was a little bit too big, and I couldn't decide what to frame, so my proportions are off, my perspective is off. The color was terrible. This was really loose, and overall I didn't like how this one turned out. But this one, I'm going to show the reference of this one right here. This one ended up being one of my absolute bangers. Like, I love how this one turned out. One of my favorites for sure. Then one of my latest ones here, again, a little bit more perspective, a little bit more of a scene, not just a single building. And then this was my live one that I showed you guys in that time lapse. So overall, about 46 sketches, 35 hours, which I will show right here, of total time invested into urban sketching. And overall, I think I'm really happy with my progress. Let's go back home. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I feel like I made a good amount of progress in those 40 days now that I've been doing this actively. And I think I'm pretty proud of where we've gotten, and I'm really considering doing this for a much longer period of time. So hopefully we can come back in 100 days or maybe even after a year and see what kind of progression we make. But remember, this is something that's done intentionally, and it's something that I'm learning now in my life, later in my life. It's just the compounding interest of anything that you do, the consistency. I think it pays off, and I'm starting to see that in my art, in my urban sketching. I feel more confident. I'm developing this perspective of the world where I'm starting to see shapes and how I can draw things. It's becoming an itch. It's becoming an understanding. I'm in the point where I'm really enjoying the process, and I'm no longer frustrated with how bad they look or not being able to capture a moment when I'm out in the world with my journal. I'm where I want to be, but I always want to be better. And remember, it's something as small as 40 minutes a day. Imagine the things that you could do. Imagine how different your life would be if you could just commit 1 hour a day of your life, how different your life could be in 1 year. And I'm thinking about all the stuff that I could have done, all the things that I could have achieved had I just been more consistent and done that single hour a day. Listen, I waste my time doing a lot of bullshit in my life, okay? TikTok, now Threads, it's a disaster. Don't even get me started. But I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to become more consistent. And this was the first thing I've ever done in my life where I've done it for over 30 days intentionally, other than exist. Okay, I'm pretty proud of it. I hope you guys can start a challenge for yourselves, start trying to accomplish a goal by being consistent. And I would love to hear about it. If you've done something like this, please let me know in the comments down below, because I think that's amazing. I think the people that can do this are the real superheroes, are the super powerful people of the planet, the high achievers. Those are the kind of people that I want to be surrounded with. So if you're that kind of person, subscribe and leave a comment down below. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.